must worship. We research, we strive, unity and truth, we facilitate, teaching and learning in all disciplines and cultures, transforming Africa's education. AAU, the hub of excellence, shaping Africa's educational thought. AAU, spring of talents, web of worship, amazing, basic promoting innovation, upholding quality, equity, and standards, transforming Africa's education. We espouse, we spread, using last worship, we research, we strive, unity and truth, we facilitate, teaching and learning in all disciplines and cultures, transforming Africa's education. AAU, the pillar of higher learning, spearheading Africa's development. AAU, one of friendship, our fellowship, partnership for higher education. Africa's intellectual advancement are focus to achieve the freedoms. We espouse, we spread, using last worship, we research, we strive, unity and truth, we facilitate, teaching and learning in all disciplines and cultures, transforming Africa's education.
So, Prof. Juliet.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for unmuting me. Thank you. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you may be joining from across our beautiful globe, it is my honor this morning here in the UK to welcome you to this final session of what has been truly an amazing and riveting week, during which we have been fed with knowledge, provoked, intrigued, challenged, and educated. One comment caught my eye. Great ideas. AI has come to stay. The question is, how can African academics leverage on this innovation to improve research and quality of higher education teaching research without compromising the quality of service and observation of ethics? Colleagues, the Association of African Universities, in partnership with the University of Nottingham and the Ethical Data Initiative, has launched a groundbreaking campaign for the inclusion of ethics in AI and data science education on a global scale. In this session, we bring you a team of experts who will lead discussion on this critical subject. To kick us off, I will invite Professor Frederick Atto Ama, Director of Research and Programs at the AAU Secretariat. He will immediately be followed by our fantastic webinar moderator, Catherine Bailey. Over to you, Professor Ama.
Thank you so much, Professor Juliet Tonglana, for this wonderful intro. Good day to you all everywhere you are streaming. On behalf of the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities, Professor Olushola Bandele Oyewolo, I welcome you all to this webinar and bring you warm felicitations from the Secretariat of the Association of African Universities. It is indeed heartwarming to see attendees from all over the world at this particular webinar. And we are also thrilled by the level of participation and the quality of the engagement of representatives of AAU member universities since we began this week-long celebration on Monday. Thank you very much for making the activities a resounding success. This event is a result of the collaboration between the Association of African Universities, the University of Nottingham, and the Ethical Data Initiative. The essence of the partnership is to advocate for the inclusion of data ethics in data science education on a global scale. Indeed, we have had a week-long celebration of African universities filled with stimulating and thought-provoking sessions with top-level university management, faculty, institutions, administrators, and students who have vested interest in the higher education landscape of Africa. We have also had a capacity building workshop on the roles and responsibilities of senior university management in the 21st century. Information governance, internal quality assurance mechanisms in universities, and with special emphasis on African quality rating mechanism, project management, data ecosystem and digital skills, digital transformation, leadership skills and management, and professional development. All of these are taking place this past week. Our generation has undergone a digital transformation. Data we know facilitates improved decision-making and problem-solving. And the digital revolution has changed our way of life and provided solutions for a host of problems. But it has also raised a number of issues and problems that concern everyone. For instance, what frameworks and governance regulations are required to ensure that digital technology and opportunities are accessible to all and that no one monopolizes the foregoing? How can we ensure that appropriate governance frameworks are in place to instill values throughout all data ecosystems? These are pertinent issues. Today is the last day, and this online session promises to be equally fascinating. We will dwell on AI and data ethics and consider the ethical dilemmas associated with data and AI. These dilemmas include lack of transparency of AI tools in relation to AI decisions not always being intelligible to humans, the fact that AI is not neutral, and we know that AI-based decisions are susceptible to inaccuracies, discriminatory outcomes, and embedded or inserted bias, issues about surveillance practices for data gathering and privacy of court users, and new concerns for fairness and risk for human rights and other fundamental values. These are some of the issues that we believe will be discussed in the session today. We all know that open data does not equal fair data. Data can be open and still be unfair. By the same token, we can assert that open AI does not equal fair AI. For instance, in the context of generative AI, specific issues have come to the fore. Issues relating to distribution of harmful content, copyright and legal exposure, data privacy violations, sensitive information disclosure, amplification of existing bias, workforce roles and morale, data provenance, that is data lineage or chain of custody of data or data trajectory, as well as lack of explainability and interpretability of the data. In fact, we talk about correlations rather than causality. All of these issues are pertinent. And today, we hope that this webinar will cover some of the foregoing issues and bring conceptual clarity to bear on the debate when it comes to AI. For this reason, we are looking forward to a very engaging session to climax the week-long commemoration of the 56th Africa University Day celebration. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Secretary General of the Association of African Universities, I say Akwaba, bienvenue, karibuni, welcome. Please, let the excitement begin. Asantini, thank you all.
Greetings and a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for being here with us today. My name is Catherine Bailey and I am Director of Communications, Policy and Partnerships at the Ethical Data Initiative, and I will be your moderator for today's discussion. The Association of African Universities, in partnership with the University of Nottingham and the Ethical Data Initiative, are delighted to present the third instalment of the Data Ethics and Responsible Data Discussion Series as part of the wider AAU African University Day celebrations, which this year focus on technology and AI in higher education. You can find the first 2 episodes of the Ethical Discussion Series on the AAU TV website and on their YouTube channel. The series explores pressing questions inherent in digital technology use, data collection and data-driven research, highlighting the need for training researchers and digital practitioners in the ethics of data protection, use and reuse. Our society has undergone a digital transformation, and while this revolution has brought about many positive changes, including improved decision-making and problem-solving, it has also presented us with real-life challenges and questions that affect all of us. It's clear that Africa certainly has not been left behind in this data revolution, which affects and benefits all of us, though perhaps not in the same way, but we do all need to be aware of how our data is being used and stored, what our responsibilities are, and how evolving legislation affects us. To this end, we have begun the Data Ethics in Data Science Education campaign to advocate for the inclusion of data ethics in all data science, ICT, research-based higher education courses to train the next generation of data and research professionals about their legal and ethical responsibilities surrounding the use, reuse, and sharing of data. We will send out more information about the campaign, including how to get involved, to participants after the webinar. Today, we will be exploring the topic of AI and data ethics in higher education. But before we get started, I'd like to do a little housekeeping. So this event is being live streamed and recorded, and it will be made available on YouTube and on AAU TV. So for those of you that don't already know, the Association of African Universities have a television network that was established in 2018 to deliver news and important information on higher education related issues on the African continent. We would ask that you please use the text chat function for any discussion during this event. And please keep your microphones muted out of respect for the panelists, and please do not interrupt the speakers or the conversation that's going on, but please do feel free to use that chat box to debate and to ask questions. So it just remains for me to let you know about the structure of the webinar today. After the introduction, we will move on to the main panel discussion. Then at the end, we'll have a question and answer session from the audience, during which we will endeavour to put as many of your questions to the panel as time permits. So please make full use of that chat function to add to the debate and put forward your questions to the panel. We'll encourage you to be as interactive as possible. So if everyone is happy, we'll dive into today's topic. This year's Africa Universities Day theme is Artificial Intelligence in African Higher Education Institutions. And with the increasing pace of technological development and the growing cross-sectoral importance of AI and data, this year's topic fittingly centres around how these developments, for example, IoT technologies, virtual reality and language processing, impact all aspects of university life. from teaching and learning to research, collaboration, and administrative functions. Today, we will explore together how the exponential rise in technological development has impacted the education sector and the ethical considerations that need to be taken into account as a result. The panel of experts will consider the role of AI and other emerging and quickly developing technologies in higher education and research, and what challenges this raises for policymakers, educators, researchers and students, including the importance of introducing ethics learning in education generally. We are really lucky to have a very impressive panel of experts participating in today's debate. So if our panelists can start unmuting and turning their microphones on, I'll proceed with a quick round of introductions before we begin our questions. We have with us today Bernd Stahl. Professor Stahl is a professor of critical research in technology at the School of Computer Science of the University of Nottingham. His interests cover philosophical issues arising from the intersections of business, technology, and information. This includes ethical questions of current and emerging information and communication technologies, critical approaches to information systems, and issues related to responsible research and innovation, or RRI. Damien Eke also joins us today, and Professor Eke is a transitional assistant professor at the School of Computer Science, University of Nottingham. His work centres on critical philosophical issues around technology, data and society, including but not limited to responsible data governance, ethics of emerging technologies, responsible innovation, and information and communication technology for development. He has special interests in responsible innovation and in and for African societies. Deborah Kanubala is the organizer of the Women in Machine Learning and Data Science for Ghana and the co-founder of the Women Promoting Science to the Younger Generation. Dr. Kanubala is a researcher at Saarland University in Germany, developing ethical machine learning models. And prior to her current role, Deborah also worked as a neuro-linguistic processing engineer at Proto in Canada and lectured at Academic City University in Ghana. She's been a recipient of many awards and scholarships, including the MasterCard Foundation Scholar Grant and the Alumnode Project Grant, among others. In 2019, she was recognized as one of the 100 most influential people in STEM. Emma Rutkamp-Blum, last but not least, is the head of the Department of Philosophy at the University of Pretoria and is leading the AI ethics group at the South African Centre for AI Research. Professor Rutkamp-Blum also chairs the Southern African Conference on AI Research. She is the current chairperson of the UNESCO World Commission on the Ethics of Scientific Knowledge and Technology, and she led the expert group that prepared the 2021 draft UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI. Among her many public and private sector high-level advisory roles, Emma is also a member of the newly convened UN Secretary General's AI Advisory Body. So we will now, if our panel are all unmuted with their videos on, we will proceed to the first questions. So for the first question, I will call on Professor Stahl, Bernd Stahl, to kick this off. And we will also go to Deborah Kanubala and to Damien Eke as well. So first of all, Professor Stahl, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Fantastic. So our first question for today is, what are the main roles of AI in higher education? And how do we harness opportunities and manage arising challenges?
Okay, so this is a good question to start the debate because it's very broad. It's also a very difficult one to answer, not least because there are potentially as a whole is still, or societies worldwide, are still struggling with the question of how best to address this. How can we safeguard the benefits and how can we address the disadvantages? And well, I think today's discussion is hopefully going to help us somewhere in that direction. I don't think we're going to find any final solutions or final answers to them right now. And I think I'll stop here. And that was my attempt to open the space of debate for today.
Excellent, thank you very much. So Professor Stahler's opened by saying that there are a lot of challenges, but also a lot of opportunities there. So I'd like to ask Deborah Kanubala, if you're unmuted, could you please add to that?
Okay, all right. So first of all, I want to say thank you very much for the invitation to add my voice to this very important discussion. I think that the field of AI, we have all agreed that it's transforming several industries, but of course still poses a lot of challenges or risks to different sectors. And so I think having discussions like this to discuss how the AI in itself is going to impact the higher education, which is one of the very most important sectors in the world, I think it's pretty much very important. So just to build up on what Professor Bent explained, I think when we talk about the roles of AI in higher education, you can think about it in the two folds, the teaching and the research. I want to add my voice towards the facilitating teaching and learning part of it. So I think that one role that AI is going to play in particularly for most African countries is sort of facilitating learning, in the sense that whilst we were in school, there are some particular courses, for example, some particular courses that have higher numbers of students, and most often you find lecturers having to deal with full rooms of students, and the students to teach a lecturer ratio is already very low in that sense. And sometimes others even struggle to even get seats to sit in the classrooms. And for the to learn with music or just different stuff or different ways of learning. In a traditional classroom, it's not going to be possible to have one teacher who can teach materials in all of these forms. But with AI, we can actually have personalized learning to be able to facilitate learning in this regard. So these are just some few roles that I think that AI is going to transform our higher educational sector. But then, just like everyone has already said, also it also poses some form of challenges in the regard. And a few of them that I wanted to just highlight on, first of all, is with user acceptance and trust. I think that as researchers in this field, one challenge we are facing hugely is how we can actually even explain ML, machine learning or AI models. For example, if I build an automatic grading system, or I build a loan approval system, you only pass on, you are able to do your feature selection and pass on to your model, and then you get to know who is going to pay back a loan or not. But as to how the model actually makes the decision to decide who is paying back a loan and who is not, you don't get to really understand or be able to explain that. But now, if we use these AI tools in our educational sector, and we as researchers can't even explain how these systems makes decision, it's hard for you to find people to actually just accept and trust this tool, that it's the best decision-making tool in that regard. And another thing which is in line with some of the roles it plays, which is the personalized learning that I mentioned and automatic grading, I think people are going to be scared about losing jobs. For example, tutors in particular, mostly they go to class to handle tutorials and then provide feedback to smaller subsets of students. But if you have an AI that is doing most of this work, then you may think that these people are going to worry of loss of job. But for this particular challenge, I think that one thing we could do is to think about how we can upskill those tutors. Instead of focusing just on the grading and handling tutorials, we could upskill them to do more research, identify problems that are directly impacting us as Africans or the world at large, and then try to find solutions to them through research. So I think that though AI plays a huge role in the educational sector, we also still have some few challenges that we probably have to, first of all, identify and think about ways in which we could mitigate some of these things. So this is just a bit of my addition to this. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Deborah. So I love the part on facilitating learning, which AI can play a massive role in. And I'm also really excited that you brought up trust as well, because trust is one of the biggest barriers to adoption of these modern technologies. I'd really like to ask Damien Eke, please, to join the debate at this point. So what are the main roles of AI in higher education, and how do we harness opportunities and manage arising challenges? Damien.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to actually contribute to this discussion. And I thank Bert and Deborah for pointing out the role of AI in teaching and also in research. But also AI is being used in higher education around the world for administrative purposes. AI can be used in administration in higher education to streamline processes and enhance efficiency and improve the overall functioning of the institution. Admissions and enrollment is one aspect that AI is being heavily used by higher education by institutions, because AI can automate admission processes, handle applications, evaluate eligibility and assess in enrollment. Uses and roles AI can play in administrative purposes in higher education. But then the question is, how can we harness these opportunities and manage the challenges? I think the first thing for higher educational institutions is to invest in human and technical infrastructure. Institutions need to invest, for me, a robust AI infrastructure and provide training. But also, just as Brent and Deborah pointed out, as we look at the positive aspects of AI, we have to be cautious that AI raises a lot of ethical and legal questions and concerns. So for us to harness the positive impact of AI, we also need to address the ethical concerns related to data privacy, bias in algorithms, and in general, responsible use of AI. And also possibly implement transparent and fair AI systems in higher education. Also, there needs to be collaboration within institutions. higher education institutions need to foster collaboration between educators, technologists, innovators, and policymakers to ensure that there are holistic approaches or policies that can help to implement AI in education. And then to also harness that, institutions need to be a little bit flexible. You need to listen to the times and actually be encourage students and also staff to get feedback and to continually improve and implement AI applications in higher education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Damien. And I do like that you sort of bringing up addressing these many ethical concerns, in fact, as a way to sort of bridge that gap and to build the trust. We've got a few interesting questions in the chat that I might just insert one of them at this point. So there has been a few mentions policies to account for the rise of generative text technologies such as ChatGPT, and there's quite a lot of questions around ChatGPT. For example, if a student were to use ChatGPT, does it, in your opinion, does that mean plagiarism?
Okay, maybe I will go on this because recently I published a paper on this, ChatGPT and the rise of generative AI systems, threat to academic integrity, because this is actually the primary argument people make that when a student uses generative AI system, it constitutes plagiarism. In this paper, I disagree because plagiarism, the idea of plagiarism implies theft. It implies the theft of intellectual property. So if I use generative AI system to help me to write a paper, I wonder whose intellectual property that I'm stealing, because OpenAI would tell you it's not their work. So, but in the case of academic integrity, the question is, does it breach the principles of academic integrity? Yes. Academic integrity thrives on a few principles of honesty, of transparency, of truth, of being, as I said, being honest. So if I use generative AI systems without proper acknowledgement of using generative AI systems and being dishonest, that means it breaches the principle of academic integrity. But does it constitute plagiarism? I don't think so. So it is left for the institution to establish policies on academic integrity that can mitigate the use of generative AI systems without proper acknowledgement, or develop their own internal acknowledgement system for the students and staff to use. One argument that comes from this is this should be banned for students. Students should not use it, or it should not be used in academia. But one thing people forget when they make the argument is that these students are being prepared for the society that it's increasingly embracing generative AI systems. They need to be aware of how to use it responsibly. And it's the job or responsibility of the institution to teach them how to use generative AI systems responsibly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Can I quickly jump in there as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just I mean, in principle, I agree with Damien. But I think the question of academic integrity is not quite as black and white one, but more gray one in many respects. Yes, if you get ChatGPT to write your whole essay, that's now an infringement of integrity. But now there are, of course, gradations of that. So if you use ChatGPT to reflect on possible essay titles, is that a bad thing? And then you pick one, no, not so bad, right? If you use it to improve the quality of your writing, if you use it to help you ensure that your grammar and spelling is okay, is that a problem? Well, I'm not so sure. The point I'm trying to make is that between the black and the white, there are lots of shades of gray. And I think that's really where it gets interesting. And that's, I think, where higher education institutions have an opportunity to be creative, to come up with good ways of helping students to think through those questions. And I fully agree with Damien as well that this really is something that they need, universities need to do with a view to what happens after university. So students are prepared for the world out there. How does the world out there use these technologies? And I think that needs to inform how we think about them in the higher education context as well.
Fantastic, thank you. And I can see that Professor Roetkamp-Blom has unmuted herself, and I'd really like to hear what she has to say on this as well. So I'll give you the floor.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with both Damien and Bernd. I think it is, what is just important is also to, it's very silly to ban it. But what is important is to, when we say students must acknowledge the use of generative AI in their essays, I mean, you can't have it write your whole essay and just acknowledge it. Then, you know, so there is, as Bernd said, I think it is also important to understand different uses of it. And rather have students interact with it as a kind of thinking companion, a sparring partner, if you do philosophy, because it can be truly very bad. It can also be very good. So in that sense, it is just like a human. It's definitely not human level intelligence, but it is like a human. You argue sometimes with someone who completely misses your point. But it is good for students to sharpen their views. And it is good to maybe, you know, get it to come up with different titles, even for it to come up with an outline for an essay or whatever the case might be. But what is important is that, and that this is a very tough job, and maybe later I'll say more about that, but we have to find ways in which we still are able to carry over why integrity is important in academic work. And I see it increasingly at my university in Pretoria that students don't really see this anymore. They're not sure. It's not that they are dishonest, not at all, but it's simply that they become confused between all these different options. And that means that we are not doing our job. But yeah, I'll maybe say a little bit more about this later. I see Deborah also has her hand up. Thanks.
Can I get in? Can I go in? Okay, yeah, so what I wanted to say is I wanted to use it, I mean, based on all the submissions from the other panelists, I wanted to just use a very simple example, which is a calculator, right? I remember in high school, most of the time, there are things that we are allowed to use calculators in high school, but from junior high school, you do not use calculators. There are things, maths stuff that some of my colleagues are able to use the calculator to solve just within seconds. But for them to have been able to do that, they needed to have learned how to do it. Now, why did I use the calculator as an example? Thinking about ChatGPT as a tool, for example, before, if you give ChatGPT to 2 students, you can give person A the same question, person B the same question, but the responses or the kind of output the two are going to produce will be completely different. Why? Because the prompts that you give to ChatGPT, and then based on the output you get, you need to understand the output it gives to you, because ChatGPT hallucinates. So you need to be able to, first of all, understand the output it gives to you, first understand the prompt, understand the output, and then fine-tune it to suit your own purpose. So at the end of it, I'm not sure that ChatGPT or any generative AI should necessarily be banned per se, but then students would need to learn how to use this tool to their own benefit. But then coming back again to the concept of whether just not referencing output from ChatGPT is plagiarism or not, I'm not going to highlight particularly on the output, but thinking about how ChatGPT is trained. ChatGPT on its own cannot give you any outputs. Why am I saying this? How it learns is that they produce different texts from writers, researchers, and fed it into the system, and it learns to generate similar patterns of text. And there's been this very heated argument about how artisans' works have been passed to AI systems, and then you can just go on an AI and say, okay, I want a picture drawn by this arts person, and then it gives it to you. Now the concern is that the integrity or the works of those people have sort of been stolen and fed into these AI systems, and then they learn or fit on this and then reproduce similar things to that. So what do we have to say about it? Do we need to just say that, okay, the works of, let's say, an art person or a writer is no longer necessary because a ChatGPT can give me similar thing? But ChatGPT is not giving it to you based from its own. It's given to you based from learning from these people. And that's where sometimes it becomes very dicey, because now you are learning from historical information of these people, which is their own work. They need to think and write these things and make them publicly available. And then you'd use that as your training data. And so I think we would come back to this on this data governance and how you get access to data and all of that. So for me, my main concern with ChatGPT and other generative AI is, when it comes to plagiarism, is taking works of other people and fitting it to these systems, and they trying to replicate the same thing. That is questionable, and that is a source of concern.
Thank you very much. So I'll just read out a couple of the comments here from the chat, and then we'll move on to the next set question that we have for today, so that we're sort of spreading the discussion over different topics. There's a comment here in the chat that OpenAI have apparently recently launched GPT Store, if anybody wanted to have a look at that. And also from Sharon Ainsworth, the concern that students with more money may be able to have more avenues then to buy better outcomes at universities. And that would certainly be a concern with the rise in these technologies. So on to the next question. What relevant policies can have an impact on the use of AI in higher education? And I'd like to start off with Damien, if that's okay.
Yes, that's absolutely fine. So there are many policies that can have significant impact on the use of AI in higher education. These policies should be tailored in such a way that they can promote the design, development, and deployment of AI systems, but while at the same time ensuring that there are robust considerations of ethical and legal and sociocultural, often sociocultural issues. One is data management and governance policy, including privacy and data protection policies. This can ensure compliance with data protection regulations within the country to safeguard both students and the university research data and also their personal data, to establish clear guidelines on the collection, the storage, the sharing, and the use of data within AI systems, which is not often captured in data protection regulations in Africa, because I've studied some of them. These policies can also address the issues of ownership and control of the data to mitigate against what people now call data colonialism, particularly in collaborative projects. Why this is important is because many universities from outside of Africa, from the global north, would like to collaborate with African universities, but oftentimes the collaboration agreement is skewed in such a way that data sets are often owned by or controlled by universities outside of Africa, which can constitute data colonialism. And if because the ownership and control of data within AI, it's very critical because it shifts the balance of power. So it is important to have policies that can help you to control and own the data sets within institutions. Another policy that will be important for higher education will be providing ethical guidelines and codes of conduct, including policy on academic integrity, which we've just talked about, to develop and enforce ethical guidelines for responsible use of AI in education. establish codes of conduct that address issues such as bias, transparency, and accountability in the design, development, and use of AI systems. Most people think that AI systems are not being developed in Africa. There are so many universities actually designing and developing AI systems. There should be policies, at least establishing codes of conduct for ethical or design and development of AI systems. Also, within higher education, there should be policies on access, where funds are permitted. Universities in Africa and yet elsewhere should implement policies to ensure that AI applications in education are accessible to all students, including those with disability, addressing disparities in access and AI-based educational tools is very critical in higher education, at least to ensure equitable and inclusive environment. And also, there should be, critically, there should be professional development policies. African students, as I said earlier, are being prepared for a society increasingly embracing AI systems. They need to be ready for this AI-driven society. However, people who are supposed to prepare them, oftentimes within the universities, do not have the knowledge and expertise to do so. So therefore, the universities should implement or establish policies to focus on providing training and professional development opportunities for lecturers and staff to enhance their AI literacy and integration skills, and also support ongoing learning to keep educators or staff abreast with the evolving ecosystem of AI technology. And also, maybe the last point, so that I can pass on this, is policies on collaboration and open standards. Policies that can encourage collaboration between educational institutions, between departments within the same educational institution, between industry stakeholders and government agencies to ensure resources, expertise, and best practices are upheld. And collaboration is often the key here. For instance, a biomedical faculty that needs to integrate data science within their curriculum needs to collaborate with computer science department, where they can get people to teach on those courses. So let us not work in silos. That's the point here. But have policies that can bring people together within departments to implement systems for the design and deployment of AI systems. And also, this involves the policies that can promote open standards and open science in AI applications, particularly to promote interoperability and to prevent vendor lock-in sometimes.
Thank you very much, Damien. I'm going to take, before we open this to the other panelists, I'm going to take this opportunity because I know that you've done a lot of work in the area, and you touched on on concerns around data colonialism. And I'm just wondering what you think institutions in Africa could potentially do to protect against these harms.
The first thing, because I sometimes in most of my work I deal with this, the first thing institutions need to do is to make the lecturers and researchers within the institution to be aware of this. There should be training on this to understand that you can't sacrifice ownership and control of the data on the author of getting funding from universities abroad. Always be careful to being right agreements or collaborative contracts that will preserve the ownership and control of the data, that will put it in your hands rather than give it out. That's one thing. And then have policies around that. Training and policies, I think that would be very important for universities.
Wonderful, thank you. So I'd like to open this to the rest of the panel.